Hello everyone and welcome back to Painting with Martin. Today we're back with another painting video, and now we're looking at Tiny Epic Dungeons from Gamelyn Games, who are very kind enough to sponsor me with this game during Essen Spiel. I should actually probably not say sponsor because I'm not getting paid for this video, but they gave me this game so I can paint the miniatures. It comes with a number of miniatures, I believe it's 8, and they all have this beautiful artwork on them. There's a little bit of glare here, I understand that, but the reason I put sleeves on them in case I would spill some paint on these cards, then that would be a bad idea, so I sleeve the cards, and also it's nice when you play the game. Today we're going to take a look at 3 miniatures that hopefully I'll be able to paint, and we're looking at the Windkelly as the Elf Ranger, followed by the Torden Firebraid, the Dwarf Fighter, and finally we have the Ulissa Dwarf Cleric as well. I've chosen these figures in particular because they have similar colors, and while one is drying I can focus on the next one, so there will be no waiting time and you can actually get to see how I paint 3 figures in one video. So let's get started, shall we? So we're going to start with the Windkelly Elf Ranger. And why we're doing this one is because it's mostly one colored, or very few colors in this one. It's going to be mostly dark purple, followed by with some highlights. And as always, we go through the base steps. First we do the base colors, followed by a wash, and then some highlight and finishing touches. So if you have never painted before, I would recommend that you start in this order. And if you've painted before, then you know exactly what we're going to do. So if you're fairly new to painting, I'm going to use something called contrast colors, which eliminates the base step here. And in that case, we take the base step and the wash and turn it into one, and that helps with the drying period for these miniatures. So let's get going. I'm going to put this one aside for a moment so I don't spill any paints on it, and I'm going to have the picture up over here so I can have something to look at while I'm painting. And if you've painted one of these before and you feel like, okay, I have painted one before but I haven't painted the rest, so feel free to skip to the next one and you'll see how it goes. Also, I would recommend that you also subscribe to my channel. It would really help to reach out to more people. And those of you who have already subscribed, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. So this is how the figure looks. And if I can zoom in here a little bit, then you can see that it's fairly detailed. And it has a bow and arrows and as well as sword. And we're going to color pretty much everything except for the bow and the face, and of course the skin details, with a color called Leviathan Purple, and that's a contrast color from Citadel. So with this one, we're going to use it neat, give it a good shake, and make sure that all those pigments are mixing, and we're going to apply it straight on. Holding it up like this, and that means we're starting off from the back. And if you manage to get something from of the color from, put this one aside for a moment, just I just stretch my legs a little bit. And of course the back side here as well. It will be fairly dark, but we can lighten it later on as well. And as you can see here, we go on to the next step. All the robes and fine fabric is going to be in this color. If you manage to hit the rest that we're going to color in a different color, don't worry, we can always go back to it. And there's some details over here as well that we want to cover. Come back here to the other side. We can show that we have, there's a quite detailed miniatures, so and don't forget her cloak and the hood all the way up here as well. Making sure you get all the details covered, angling the miniature as you see fit. Making sure there are no spots left uncovered. And with this one done, and go on to the next stage here. Clean our brush in the meantime, wiping it off on a piece of kitchen roll, and we go on to covering the wooden part using Wyldwood, also a contrast colour from Citadel. And of course we use it neat, and this one we're going to use it for the bow. It's a nice wooden colour. Something like this, and also from the other side here. As such. And while we're still at it, I also realized we forgot some purple details. With the cloak up here, so we're going to go back and fix that immediately so we don't miss that. These are the things that happen. So again, the Leviathan purple for the cloak, and the hood over here that I so unfortunately missed. Don't forget the ears here. You don't want to touch the ears. Those elven ears. Like this. Alright, that should be that. Now, we do however have some other details for her. And for this one, for all the leather parts, we are going, let's see if I can move this one. I'm going to use Snakebite leather from another contrast colour from Citadel. And going to move this one up. And there's going to be for all the leathery details, more in particular the pauldron over here. As well as her boots. The back side of the boots, that is. The front side has greaves, so that's going to be a metal colour. Moving back to the back side. As well as the other side here as well. I adjusted the light a little bit in case you notice why I moved my hand. Make sure that you cover all those details. Can be a little bit hard because the miniatures are fairly small and it can be quite hard to see where it goes which. And then we're also covering the other leather parts of her gloves. You can cover them black if you want to, alternatively, as well as the belt here. and all the pouches. And I'm choosing to cover her hands with this one, pretending she has gloves. If you want to use a skin color for this one, you can feel free to do so as well. As well as also this, where you store the arrows. I'm lacking the word right now. If you feel free to add it in the comments if you know what the word is. As well as the other pauldron over here, which is leather. Alright, so that looks quite okay already. And it's quite simplified. And I'm going to use the face as it is. I'm going to put some skin color on it. And for the skin color, I'm not going to use a contrast tone. I'm going to use a regular tone. And for this one, I'm going to use what we call Cadian Flesh Tone from Citadel. And apply it neat. Give it a good shake. Cadian Flesh Tone will help me define the face a bit. As such, as well as the ears. And this is the color you can use for your hands as well. Now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to the Snakebite leather a bit because I missed a few points. Most importantly, the handle of the sword, which is supposed to be in the leather color from the card art, which I'm following as much as I can here, as well as some leather parts up here. And the back side of the pauldron as well, which I missed. Using this one, leaving the white one here for a special color, which I'm going to add in a bit. Actually, I'll add it right now. And I'm going to add this one. It's going to be Burgundy base, a color called Barak Knob Burgundy. It's going to give a little bit of a different tone to all the purple. And I'm going to apply it neat in a few, like it's a very purplish color. You can water it down if you want to. As such. Okay, now we're back to we're going into the metal parts, and for the metal parts I'm going to use a color called Leadbelcher from Citadel. Chainmail silver or possibly also natural steel from Vallejo would be acceptable in this case as well, and that's going to be used for the sword. Or maybe it's a dagger, his or her greaves. And so if you covered it first with the Snakebite leather, you can cover over your mistakes over here as well. You can use alternatively gold for this one, but I feel it's a nicer touch for your ranger, D&D wise, if you play the game, to have not so much gold on it. But this is of course entirely up to you. And I'm using it neat, don't water it down. And the tip of the sword here as well, like the pommel, that's what it's called, as well as the sword guard, you can also use in this color. Looks quite okay already. And before we move into the stages for the face, I'm going to cover the arrows. And for the arrows here, I'm going to use a different kind of purple because I wanted a different color, because we don't really know what color it is. It can be red, it can be blue, and that means I'm going to change my for Genestealer purple, I believe it's called. Let's see if I can find it. And there you go, Genestealer purple from Citadel for the arrows, and we're going to use them neat. And this is a very, very basic painting details, without any details. And if you're happy with this figure like now, like it looks like right now, then you can stop and then you can simply take it to the table. But if you want to add some more details, stay on the channel and keep watching. And we're going to leave this one to dry for a second, and we're going to go into the next stage for the next miniature. We're going to be Ulissa, the Dwarf Cleric, and that's the Dwarf Cleric. So the Ranger will have to wait for a while. It's going to be very similar colors in terms of the Elven Ranger. And we're going to apply some Leviathan purple to it again, contrast color, to all the purple parts of the armor. Which means I don't use much paint on my brush when I do this one, and apply it only on the lower part of the armor here. Taking care not to touch too much of the her lower skirts and her chainmail arm as well. Also, there is a little bit of this inside here as well on her pauldrons. That's why I don't apply so much color, so it's not going to be too dark. But I do actually want to make sure that it's the back side as well. And of course under the miniature as well. And around the hair. Her hair is quite long. Very similar to this. And of course we also have it all up over her chest, like this, but we don't touch the center ones, or do we? Oh yes, we do, above the belt as well. But try not to touch the symbol here in the center, which is some kind of cross. And already starting to look much better. That's what I really like about painting, that you actually can apply some really, really nice details on the miniature. Won't win you any competitions, but it's going to look much nicer when you play the game. And Tiny Epic Dungeons is one of those dungeon crawlers that it really feels much better when it's painted. Before we go on, do we have anything that we missed here? And I see here that I missed a little bit part of her arms here with this color. It's very easy to miss, and better to correct it right now. That's the mistakes you learn from the past, and try not to make them again. Alright, putting this one down so I can clean my brush. And then we move on to her hair, I believe. And for her hair, I'm going to use some Barak Burgundy for her hair. You can use Khorne red potentially as well, but I'm going to experiment with this one and see how it turns out. I'm going to use it neat, because she has a very dark, like wine red hair over here. As well as this one. I'm using a size 2 brush here. It's a Winsor Newton Cotman round brush. It's a synthetic one. I prefer using synthetic ones because I care about the animals. And I've always used synthetic brushes. But if you use natural hair, don't feel bad about it. They're always really, really good as well. So, but it's a size 2 brush. Moving around here. And we're painting her hair as well. If you plan to paint over her kind of like metal thing that keeps the hair together, I'm not very keen on those words, then feel free to just add me in the comments what it's called, because I'm still learning here. There we go, and we move on to the other parts of the figure here. Also the other part of the hair. Making sure we don't miss anything. We're going to just paint it over. And it looks quite okay. Then we're going to go over to the scarf. Cleaning our brush, of course. Going to close the paint pot. For the scarf, I'm going to use something called Khorne red from Citadel as well. Most of these colours for these videos are going to be give it a good shake from Citadel's range. And I wanted dark red. It's painting it neat as well again. And we're going to start with the back side. You could use a contrast colour called Blood Angels Red if you want to save some time, which I maybe should have done here. In retrospect. And moving it around like this, taking great care not to touch the armour. It's quite a lot of armour here to touch otherwise. But if you get it right, it can really, really help you with the miniature. I've got the expansion for Tiny Epic Dungeon as well, which Gamelyn Games also provided me with. And if I have time, I'm going to show you how to paint those miniatures too. Here you have the frontal scarf as well. Something like this. Quite okay. And now for the rest of her, I'm going to go into and paint her skin details. Now for the skin details, I'm going to opt to use some Kislev flesh, if I can find the box. Ah, it's behind here, it's hiding. Kislev flesh, because I want it much lighter. Using very little paint on the brush to make sure it doesn't oversaturate. Wiping most of it off on my thumbnail here and painting facial details like this. Facial details also underneath the helmet. Pushing my brush in between in case I don't reach. And also there's a little bit on below the chest here. Below the the scarf. It can be hard to reach. But something like this, putting it down, always cleaning my brush. It's better to clean your brush one time too many than one time too few. Moving on, we will go on to the metal parts using Leadbelcher. Giving it a good shake as normal and applying it neat like most metal colours. And then we'll go on to paint her the chainmail armour here. As well as her gloves. You can potentially paint them black if you want another colour. And the other glove as well, which has more of a purplish tint, so we're going to maybe dye it a little bit purple. As such, and we also got the helmet part. Both helmets parts here. You can cover the entire helmet here with this color. Quite a beautiful detailed miniature. I love clerics in general. I've never played one in D&D, not in this game. I prefer paladins in general, but they are really good to keep. They're really good to have in a fight. Can do a lot of things more than just healing. Made a mistake here. I'll try to cover it up later. And for those of you wondering why I'm not painting the, oh yeah, we can paint these ones part of the armor here as well. These ones here, part of the gloves. There are some golden parts here as well that I want to cover as well that are quite important, really important parts of the miniature. Can paint this one underneath the pauldrons as well. And the reason why I haven't touched them yet is that I have a special way to deal with them. But first, I'm going to leave some of these areas to dry. And we're going to focus on the boots. And for the boots, I'm choosing to use some Snakebite leather contrast paint from Citadel as well. There will be a list of all the paints used in this video for all three miniatures in the description box, in case you wondered about that. For the boot, that's for the boots. Cover all the parts of the boot, back side as well. All right, now time for some of the interesting things. You could potentially just paint Retributor armor gold straight over them. I'm going to opt for a different way to do this, and I'm going to use some what we call, let's see, we have this color here available. yeah, there we go. Some Averland sunset over the gold parts, using it neat. Taking it by the hammer here, and here I'm painting over these ones here, so it's not overly saturated golden details here. But quite nice. And has kind of like a gold feel to it. I'm going to paint these ones entirely gold here. The side. You can paint them in chainmail as well if you want to. And going back to the other side. And the other side here as well. Don't forget the little side details here, around the sides here, painting around here, which is nice. And then we're going to go up here to the hammer, painting the sides here with the hammer, with this color. Taking great care not to touch anything else. So all the sides here, kind of like the smite of the hammer showing here, turning it around. Don't forget the underside here. As well, also the pommel of the hammer as well, entirely in this color. All right, and also the knob up here as well for the hammer. Leaving the hammer parts where the gold part is to dry, so we can go over and fix potential mistakes. And the first mistakes we're going to fix is with some chainmail. We forgot to add. Going over with some chainmail, some Leadbelcher. So we don't have any white parts here that are not covered. Okay. Looking quite okay already, in my opinion. And this means we're going to go over to the last part, in this case, for the hammer parts before we can leave it to dry entirely. And this is going to be some less Celestial Grey from Citadel. Painting it neat across all the wooden parts, no, not the wooden parts of the hammer, but the stone parts of the hammer. Don't forget the top part. The Averland sunset has dried at least a little bit. On the underside here as well. One or two layers will be sufficient for this one, if you dilute the paint. Okay. And then the final part of the hammer we're going to touch is the handle. And for the handle, I'm again returning to Snakebite leather from Citadel to paint the leathery part of the handle. And this time using a very, very tiny amount to make sure it doesn't drip onto the beautiful other parts we already covered. And that concludes the base step for the Dwarf Cleric. Before we go over to anything else, we're going to go back to one of the more impressive details of the Tordin Firebrand Dwarf Fighter, looking like this. This one has quite a lot of details. I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can. And we're going to go through and cover his beard first of all, using some Jokarero orange, a base color from Citadel. And that also covers his mohawk style haircut. Beautiful. Using it neat. And already when you put it on, you can see that the figure comes to life. Don't forget the moustache here and his braided moustache details. And the underside of it. Maybe my hand is a little bit in the way, but I think you can figure out where to paint it. Okay, when this one is done, it doesn't look that much. We're going to go over to the hammer. And the hammer, again, we're going to go use some Celestial Grey from Citadel on all the hammer all the stone parts of the hammer. Which means, in this case, we're going to cover the entire one with this color. And go back to fix the details later on. Using a thin cut layer of paint with this one. Come back, and these ones too. Now, with this same color, we can actually paint the sides of his impressive armor up here as well. Just the sides, the inner sides of both of these. We don't paint the tops. But come back on the other side as well. Angling the miniature as you see fit. Kind of like imitating that he's got stone armor. And then with this one done, we can go and look at his shield. And for the shield, I'm going to use some contrast Wyldwood for the shield, also from Citadel, which we used before for the Elven Ranger. And only for the wooden part here, making sure that none of the other details are obscured. Such as that. You can also paint the wooden handle of the axe, no, the stone hammer with this one. Alright, and then when we've done this, we're going to go over and paint lots of the purple details, because he is also fairly purple, that's why I selected it. And for the purple details, we're going to use some contrast Leviathan purple for this one, and we're going to cover a lot of his clothes in this color. First of all, we're going to go around and cover his, in between here, the face and his neck clothing. Taking as much care as we can not to touch the like the bands of leather in between here. But anything in between here will be of this color. Also his like dress here, or skirt, or whatever you want to call it, can be covered in this color. You can use a diluted form of this one if you want, to make sure it doesn't appear too dark. As such, also going over his, we'll probably pretend that's skin armor here. Those are skin details. Alright, this one done. I'm going to go over and paint some of his other clothing details. There's nothing here on the card art that actually says this or that, so if you feel that you rather want another color, you can just add it as well. And for these ones, we're going to go over to some Kantor blue from Vallejo, from Citadel, and to paint the front and back of his loincloth. There's going to be this little detail here, not covering the sides. And also the back here with this one. As such, I pretend that he has quite a bit of leather armor. That's what dwarves, in my opinion, does. But before we go into the leather parts, we're going to go into apply some Kislev flesh to the skin parts, because now the Jokarero orange has dried, and we don't risk mixing it up. So the sides of his head, quite important, as well as his, I pretend he has some skin showing over here. Need a little bit more paint. As well as his muscular arms over here. As such. And then we can go over his skin details later on. Now we're going to apply some leather armor. Again, applying some Snakebite leather from Citadel, the contrast range. To all skin details, not skin details, to all leather details that you find on this one. For example, his gloves. and his straps on the back and belt. And don't forget a belt around it. And as well his boots. See if I can angle the miniature here so you can see. All his boots. It's a little bit detailed to angle it to make sure you see. Hopefully you can see it when I turn it like this, so you can see the boots. And almost there. There you go. Now, time to apply some gold, because he has quite a bit of it. And for gold, I'm using some Retributor armor from Vallejo, from Citadel again. And this one neat on all the golden details of his armor, as well as the trim of his shield. So I'm trying to apply it like this. So one single go. The back side as well. On the other side. Applying some bit more paint. And the sides here as well. Not inner parts, because those are going to be still with the grey. And the rim of his shield. Taking care not to touch his beard as well here. He would be otherwise upset and might hold a grudge against me. We don't want dwarven grudges, do we? Okay. And some details over here. Now we can also take this opportunity to cover the rim of the frontal loincloth, as well as the back loincloth. And now it's time to fix up some mistakes before we're finished with this one for this stage. Now let's go over to look at his shield, which is more contrast Wyldwood. On the back side of the shield is important. As such. And we also missed some spots with some Jokarero orange before for his beard and long moustache pigtails. So we're going to fix that as well. Such as this one. and also gives us an opportunity to add a second layer. Alright, yeah, a small part over here as well. Alright, this one is almost done when it comes to the first stage. We are going to apply, however, a small, thicker, darker grey between his pauldrons with some Eschen grey from Citadel, which will add a little bit of a darker element and also allow us to cover up any mistakes we made on the way. In this case, in between here, as such. All right. He looks quite okay. I'm going to leave him to the side to dry for a few moments. We're going to go back to the other ones and do some highlights. We're going to start with the Elven Ranger, and we're going to start by doing some dry brushing. And dry brushing is a nice technique. If you followed me before, you know that it's one of my favorite techniques for painting highlights. Paint dark, take a dry brush or an old brush and use some Genestealer purple. Wipe, put it, load it with paint, and wipe most of the paint off on a piece of kitchen roll, such as such. Okay, and then you do it in a stickling motion over the entire area where there was purple, blending it together and creating some contrast. Leaving some of the darker parts as necessary. That's this one. Then we're going to apply a wash for the face. And for this one, it's going to be some Reikland Fleshshade from Citadel. And this is going to make sure it's going to bring out some of the highlights of the face. And we apply it neat. As well as the ears. As such. And while we still have this one, we can do the same thing for the Dwarven Cleric. Making sure we don't oversaturate it, and if we do, we soak it up with a damp brush. As such. Alright. And we can also already go over those details for our Dwarven fighter here. Making sure he has some nice facial features. Now when we're still at the wash, I'm going to mix and match a little bit between the figures. The wash is not necessary to cover any purple details, but when it comes to anything else, we might need some washes. And for the first one, I'm going to use for his beard, which is some Cassandora yellow, or you can also use Fuegan orange. I'm going to opt for the latter, both from Citadel's range. And it's going to make sure it's going to be bringing out some magic when it comes to the wash. So we know exactly where to place our highlights later on. Okay. With this one done, we're also going to apply a small set of wash for all the grey details. And for this one I'm opting to use some Nuln oil from Citadel. And Nuln oil, you can also use black wash for this one from Vallejo. They're very similar. And we use it neat. And you want to start with a cleric, no, with a fighter here, and make sure it really soaks in the recesses here. And over this one. As well as for a Dwarven Cleric, and covering her armor parts as well, dulling the effect. As such. And then, once we've applied most of our washes, we are going to apply some highlights to our figures. This is going to take a little bit of time, and I hope you're still with me. But for the for the Elven Ranger, we're going to start by applying some highlights to her leather details. And for this one, I'm using a color called XV88 from Citadel for this one, which is a really good color, and it has a very leathery feeling as well, very brown leathery. And I'm going to apply it to make sure that if I missed any parts here from previously, I can cover it up with this one as well. As such, just go over it and leaving some of the shadows in between. Here I'm touching a little bit up of the bow, leaving some color alteration of the bow over here, as well as the straps of the place where you place the arrows. Putting this one aside, and for the Dwarven Cleric, the most important part here is that we can go over a wash with her scarf, as well as her braids with some Carroburg crimson from Citadel. This one goes over there. And then we also have, see, can look at this one again, the other one. Now we're going to go over and paint some golden armor, some Retributor armor straight over her golden features. And the ones I want to highlight is the hammer and her golden armor features. here she has a bit of cross over here. So I'm going to dab this one here, as well as the center here also had a cross here, yellow one. As well as the top of the hammer. As such. Her boots can also be covered in this, not in this one, but with some XB88, which we'll go back to now, which we should have done before when it comes to leather details. My apologies. So just cover the top of her boots and the front ones as such here, leaving the shadow in the recesses so they look like boots. You can do the same thing for the dwarf fighter. And any of his gloves as well. And straps. And when it comes to now the highlight of his beard, we're going to use some Trollslayer orange, or actually Trollslayer orange or Fire Dragon Bright. Well, let's opt for Trollslayer orange for his hair and for his, also from Citadel. And we're going to cover part of the strands of the beard, making it stand out. The highlight stage is usually where you can make a figure pop more. Top here would be nice. As such. Now I'm going to leave this one aside. I'm going to see if the Dwarf Cleric has dried. And not entirely yet. But the Elven Ranger has actually dried. So we're going to actually take close attention to, I'll show you here, that she has some glowing, like white, like some glowing yellow eyes. So we're going to take some Vallejo's Cold White and paint her eyes first to give that nice effect. I'm going to switch over to a very fine tipped brush for this one. It's just a size 0 brush. Closing off my glasses. I'm really not good with eyes. Something like this. I'm going to do the same thing with the Cleric, with the Dwarf, like this, but not with the other one. Thank heavens. I'll leave this one solidly to dry before I apply anything else. And now it's time for some nice details. For the Elven Ranger, we can apply some very, very small sliver of her brooch, which is over here and over here. And for the Dwarven Cleric. We can touch up any mistakes we made with this one. With the same one here, we have a few that I forgot to cover. That's white, which is not nice. And then got this one too. And then we're looking at her hair, which is actually needs a little bit of a workup. For our hair, which would colour burgundy first, we're going to take a few dabs of Khorne red on the highlight of her, on each individual braid. And then it's going to go like this, leaving the burgundy in place in between. As such. And make sure that it doesn't really have the same color as the scarf. We're going to give the scarf a bright highlight of Evil Sun Scarlet from Citadel. Painting the top parts and leaving the recesses with the other one. And of course the front as well. And the sides. That one looks fairly okay now. We're still gonna give it a little bit of a highlight when it comes to the braids again. Applying a small dab of Fire Dragon Bright from Citadel. Almost like a heavy dry brush, just dabbing it on. I've got the backs at the side here. Something like this. She's now done completely. Thank you for that, to her. And we can actually go on to the Dwarf Cleric. No, Dwarf Fighter, sorry. Always make the mistakes of them. Oops, got attached. And then we see that he has some really, really like bright blue eyes. And it's dried. And for this one, we're going to use some very bright color as well to make sure. And there's going to be some Pylar, Glacier, contrast Pylar, Glacier. And we might need 2 layers for this one because it's a very lucent color. Something like this. And we also put this one inside his hammer here. You can colour this one white before if you want an even more effect for it. Otherwise, he looks quite okay. And we can actually sufficiently say that the dwarf fighter is done as well. Now, this one here is not entirely done because I want her to have a little bit of a glow as well. And for this one, I'm going to use a contrast color called Yanden Yellow for her eyes. Something like this. Not amazing. And there's going to be a small glow here on the shoulder here as well from her eyes, simulating a small glow effect. And that concludes our painting video for today. If you like these kind of videos, please consider subscribing. I know it took a while, but we're looking at almost 1 hour and 12 minutes, which is for 3 figures. It moves down to about 20 minutes per figure, which is quite decent. About 25 minutes maybe. And we're going to put them up here like this for you to see. And if you see if I can zoom in here for you. There you go, you have them over here. So, thanks again for watching, and please consider going into Gamelyn Games and to check out this game. And they have lots of other Tiny Epic series as well, that's what they do. Tiny Epic Game of Thrones is coming out to Kickstarter backers in November or December, and then I'll be sure to paint those as well, because I did actually back that game. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.